which is Rochester, but it's also segregated New York, Roosevelt City. So I'm wondering if you know the demographics of the people participating. And then the second question is about the qualifications for purchasing homes. So you mentioned the income restriction. You know, when you look at your presentation, the biggest gap between white households and black households, or households of color, is not income, is actually wealth. So I mean, in your presentation, you have 111,000 versus 7,000 between white and black households. So the ability to purchase a home, you know, on the market or in land trust is really significantly predicated on the wealth of the, you know, different households. So I guess my question is, do you have, besides like income, do you have any other qualifications that would, you know, sort of go towards addressing the historical segregation that you discussed?
So the short answer is no, but I'll give you the longer answer too. So we're the short of it is we're a housing provider, right? So we're selling houses. So we're subject to the housing Fair Standards Act, right? So we can't discriminate based on the color, sex, the religion, disability, etc. So that means we also can't say like these houses are exclusively for people of color, right? We can't explicitly say that. So I'm not explicitly saying that. But what we can do is we cannot go to predominantly white areas and actively recruit people who are not of color to live in these houses. Does that make sense? So if we're in communities of color, right, where we're looking to work with the community land trust, we're not going outside of these communities to other communities and saying like, hey, come move into this neighborhood. We're going to like go to like the black church and the Parcels Community Church, right? It's a predominantly black church in the Beechwood neighborhood. So that might be where we advertise the community land trust. We can do selective advertisement like that, but we have to be open to people of all backgrounds. So we can't discriminate on that. As far as like the wealth, I mean, the wealth is a little more difficult to ascertain, right? Like how to assess someone's wealth versus how to assess someone's income. So that gets a little more subjective in defining individual wealth or family wealth, and is probably beyond the scope of what the community land trust is capable of doing. But what I can say is that the community land trusts that are formed, and again, a lot of them are formed in communities of color, they are predominantly people of color. Like that's a big focus of what they're looking to do. And we have looked at, even on our board, so on our board, one of the other requirements for the board is to have at least 1/3 of people who are living in poverty be a part of the board. And that's important because a lot of the demographic that we're attempting to serve are people who are low income. So we want to make sure that people who are low income are.
How do you define poverty?
How do you define poverty?
I mean,
So-
for your qualification.
Sure. So for that qualification, we're using the standard qualification, which is 50% of area median income.
So what is it for Rochester? I mean, just what is it?
So for the area, it's about $20,000. So if you're below $20,000, would be the low income people. Yeah.
So a person that works at McDonald's that makes minimum wage,
Correct.
can they or can they not
Uh-huh.
be on your board? And can they afford one of the houses that you're going to sell?
So-
Because that is a population that is so marginalized.
Right. So the answer is yes to both those questions,
Okay.
and then that's the short answer, and then I'll give you the long answer. So HUD. So when we talk about any affordable housing, right? It's all trickling down from the federal government, right? The federal government, HUD, right? They have federal standards for what it means to be low income. Okay? And they are basing them on an individual, a 2-family, 3-family, 4-family, right? And so you have different income amounts. I don't know all of them off the top of my head, but that, when you filter that on down to all the projects, that's what, when people are talking about affordable housing, they're basing them on those standards, right? So they take what's called area median income, and then they say, okay, 60-80% is what we have to fill this unit with. This is our affordable unit. Someone has to make 60 to 80% of the area median income. Right? For Monroe County, the area median income is around $50,000. That's much higher than what we would have in, say, this neighborhood or in the city at large, right? Because we know that the poverty for our county is largely concentrated within the city, right? So when you include the suburbs in that, you start skewing the numbers, right? Because you have people that are much higher on that median scale, and you're taking the median, meaning the middle number, right? The middle number in the city is going to be much lower than the middle number in the county, and when the county and city are combined, you still get a number that's far off from that. So that's how you end up with these units that are affordable. In downtown, we're talking about all these affordable units and all these new developments. They have these affordable housing tax credits with affordable units. And then you look at the prices and you're like, that doesn't seem affordable. I know I could get a unit for much less than that in my neighborhood. It's because it's going by this area median income. So what we want to do is actually look at some alternatives to that as an organization and say, well, what is actually affordable? And this is where we want community, and I got to really stress this point too. The Community Land Trust is not me or Marie or Muhammad or Wallace or any of the other people that have been standing up here. Community Land Trust is meant to be the community, right? So anyone who wants to be a part of it can be a part of it, right? That lives within the geographic area and meets the requirements, right? The requirements are that you've attended 4 planning meetings within a 12-month period, okay? That you've paid your membership dues, and you have to make 2 out of 3 of these, okay? So if you don't have the funds to make the membership dues, that's okay. Membership dues are $25. So you've attended 4 meetings, paid the membership dues, or volunteered at some sort of community land trust event, like maybe this presentation, right? So if you don't have the $25, you could volunteer and come to 4 planning meetings. You're a member. Now what you say, you have a vote. You vote on the bylaws. You vote on the resale formula, meaning what dictates the affordability of the houses. You vote on what it means to be affordable, etc., etc. So if you think that what the people who are currently in the membership, what they've come up with as affordable, if in your life experience, your lived experience, it's not affordable, and the people you know it's not affordable, or we're not doing enough to help people in rent-to-own situations, then you can become a member. You can voice, you have a vote, 1 person, 1 vote. Doesn't matter if you're a millionaire or you have $1, or a billionaire if you have $2. 1 person, 1 vote, and you have your say, right? So that's what's really cool about it. It's the power of the people, right? Putting it into action. So we can determine for ourselves what that affordability is. Then we balance it with what we have funding-wise, right? Like maybe we can't sell all the houses for $1,000. Maybe we think that's a great idea, but we're like, oh, that's not feasible, right? Maybe $10,000 isn't feasible. But given our funding streams and what we think is reasonable and affordable for people, maybe we set a price at $20,000 or $25,000. But again, it comes from the community. Yeah.
So what advocacy or action do you need from us?
Yeah. So you've really been taking the lead on that, Matt. Do you want to talk about advocacy and action? I know you've been doing a lot of that.
Definitely just like reach out to council members, especially maybe depending on which district you live in, reach out to your district representative, ask if they've heard about the land trust. Go to the Speak to Council sessions, which is at 6:30, 3rd Tuesday of the month at City Hall Chambers. Speak for 2 minutes about literally anything you want. They have to sit there and listen, which is funny. And then, yeah, share it on your networks, tell people about the Community Land Trust. Yeah.
You've got a house, put it in there.
Yeah. Can I make another suggestion?
Yeah, please.
So I I lifted a whole bunch of these little comprehensive plan, fill out their survey cards.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if people in the room have already filled out the comprehensive plan survey. If you're familiar with what the comprehensive plan is.
The 2034?
The 2034. So they've got a rather extensive survey that gives a lot of opportunity for input in a lot of different areas. Took me like a long time to fill it out, but that's because I gave way more information than they probably wanted. But anyway, so I do have these little cards just to go fill it out and give a shout out to the Community Land Trust or whatever the things are that you feel passionate about. It's, you know, this, because the comprehensive plan will be setting the intention for where the city's going for the next 15 or so years, it's really an important opportunity for us all to weigh in and advocate for things like this that, you know, move our community in the right direction.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. Say that again. Sorry, I didn't hear.
He says that again.
Pardon me?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were.
No, what I said was you all have a lot of power to change people's lives, families. And not only as far as being able to become homeowners, but to have that as an example for their children. Because so many kids, they just think, well, we rent.
Mm-hmm.
But then to have their own home and to have that it's just so powerful. People don't get it. People that have been, probably all of you were raised in a home that your parents owned or whatever, to have their own home, a family, whether white or black, where their mother works at McDonald's, minimum wage, and to be able to own a home, that's a lot of power and opportunity here. And it's all up to all of you to do it, and do it fairly, and not have someone come in like some of the other organizations where they're on the board and they do this and they got a friend here and somebody there. You all can have that integrity and keep it like that, seriously.
No,
And I would just add to that we would love to include you in that, you all, if you would
Yeah.
be.
There's meetings every Thursday at the New City Cafe, 5:30 to 7.
That was supposed to be your slide, Sandra.
I know, but he jumped in. Go ahead, say it again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it looks like the last page of slides, open meetings, third Thursday of the month at New City Cafe, 441 Parcel Avenue.
And we have some very active committees that meet throughout the month on various days. So if Thursdays don't work for you, there's plenty of other opportunities to get involved.
And that's every Thursday, right? Not just the
Well, the third Thursday is like our big meeting. We'll definitely be there, and then that's when you can count on just showing up and knowing we're there.
Okay.
But we generally do meet on most Thursdays, just in case people are.
She had something to say.
well, just, you know, ma'am, I so
Sorry.
appreciate your passion around these issues, and it was really interesting because I went to a comprehensive plan input session earlier this week that was for the Southeast Area Neighborhood Associations, which are predominantly white and predominantly middle class. And it was fascinating to hear what they were strongly advocating for.
Which was what?
Parking, better parking. And the whole meeting was, I shouldn't say the whole meeting, but boy, was there a lot of talk about parking being an issue, and it was just like, wow, people in other neighborhoods have real problems. Get over yourself. But so just to say that that's why it is so incredibly important that people who are involved in this and supportive of this chime in about the comprehensive plan and fill out the survey and go to their meetings so that we can balance out that parking is the most important issue in the city voice. Because those people are involved and they're passionate, you know?
They'll get their parking.
And I want to take more questions if we have time, but I did want to say thank you to the Flying Squirrel. If you've never been here before, or if you have, this is an amazing space that we're so lucky to have. There's so many great organizations that meet here. They're hosting us here for free for the benefit of the community. If you feel that you are able, no pressure, no one turned away due to lack of funds, but if you're able to, put a dollar or two or whatever you feel you can in this jar, which I will now pass around, that I'm sure that they would much appreciate that. Yes, Susan?
Couple questions. One is, for example, if a family, grows up in that house, can the parents then say, you know, we want our kids to have it so that it's not sold,
Yes.
or they don't have to sell it and it's continued in the family?
Yeah, so so first of all, this house these leases, the ground lease is a 99-year lease that can be renewed twice over. So it's a 297-year lease. So it's yours for 297 years at least. If you die, you can leave it to your heirs. Your heirs do not have to income qualify in order to inherit the home. But if they were to sell it, that's when the affordability would kick in, right? So there's nothing stopping it from being transferred to your descendants.
Okay. The other question I had was, is this, I know you're just starting out, but are you hoping to get into other areas of Monroe County so that it is able to, like, if, I don't live in the city, but if I wanted to donate my house and put it on the land trust, could I do that even if it's not in the city?
Right. So we chose the city to be our focus, and our whole geographic area is the city at large. We could potentially explore that. One thing that we left and we actually I just got an email through the Community Land Trust email address from someone who works for, once again, Nut Butter. Is everyone familiar with this product? That's a great company in Noonday, New York, which is not too far from Rochester. And they're an employee-owned business, right? They're kind of like one of the poster childs locally for employee-owned businesses. But anyway, the person there wants to start a community land trust in Noonday, which is pretty cool. It's a pretty conservative area, and I wish him luck. But the community land trust that we've started, City Roots, allows for subsidiaries within our bylaws. So starting off, right, we're building interest in the community. We're getting a house here. We're kind of focusing around the Beechwood neighborhood, but not exclusive. Like, we're presenting next Tuesday to the Plex neighborhood because they're having a lot of interest. Yep.
So what are you proposing over there?
Are you going to be there?
No.
Well, we're not proposing anything because, you know, one thing we don't do is just come in and, you know, make proposals. But we're going to say what we do, and we've talked with Dorian Hall over there quite a few times. He's been to some of our meetings, and I don't know. You know what? I'm not from Plex, so I don't know the politics, and I'm not like interested in that kind of thing.
I'm not either.
But I'll just say this, that they have some interest in the Plex neighborhood. Doesn't, you know, whoever it is over there, if they're interested in, we'd be happy to work with them. But we can use, like, we're working with NCS and the Maplewood neighborhood, Need and 1461, etc. As we grow, it may be that these neighborhoods feel like, okay, now we've got 20 houses in neighborhood X, and we feel like we have our own identity, our own flavor for community land trust. They can have a subsidiary within the community land trust model where they have their own board and they can kind of run things within their neighborhood, within the overarching principles that we've kind of outlined here today. So we don't want to get too big for our britches and start just like expanding out infinitely because it's just not manageable, right? But it could be further down the line, you know, maybe there's some properties, because there's, especially in the rural areas, there's a need for affordable housing. Well, I shouldn't say especially in rural, I mean, there's a need for affordable housing in a lot of the suburbs, and actually in the suburbs where they really hate affordable housing and won't allow any developments, that's a big problem. And one of the cool things about community land trusts, too, I'll add while I'm thinking of it, is that it's not as obtrusive, right, as affordable housing tends to be, because no matter how you frame it, people who don't need it have a negative association with affordable housing, right? So the big thing now is mixed income housing, right? Mixed income housing, that's not affordable housing, it's mixed income. But everyone really hears that doesn't want it, thinks affordable housing. They think about those affordable units, and you're bringing people who need affordable housing, which is poor people, which is probably people of color, which, you know, all these things that a lot of people have negative associations with, right? With the community land trust, it's not some big 50 unit or 90 unit development. It could be like in a block of 30 houses. You put 2-3 houses that look just like every other house on the block, except that they're permanently affordable, right? You're building that diversity that everyone says they want, income diversity, people diversity, and it's in a way that's much more palatable to the NIMBYs and not in my backyard, right? So that's a way to get it into the suburbs, I think, is to say like, okay, people aren't even gonna know, right? So that's the long answer to your
Well, I'd
question.
like to invite you to the Southwest Common Council, which unfortunately is the third Thursday of every month. And come in.
Well, we'll go there instead, that's fine.
No, I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah.
saying because the Southwest Common Council represents everybody in the Southwest quadrant.
Gotcha,
So
yeah,
everybody will be there.
right, we'll be there, we'll bring a projector, we'll bring our own
Right,
projector.
so perhaps maybe we could advertise, on the agenda maybe for April.
Yeah.
See what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
Go out there. That's
Okay,
all.
yeah, maybe we can get your contact before we go if we haven't already. Did we get a contact sheet? Did we pass that around?
Yeah.
I think we
You did?
did.
Thank you.
I'm trying to wrap my brain around how do you separate the value of the house from the value of the land, or is the land merely a concept?
So, well, I mean, the land, I mean, all property is a concept, right? So,
That's separately.
like property ownership and country boundaries and all that stuff is conceptual. But, yeah, I mean, what we're doing is we're going at the assessment, right? Well, okay, so no, I shouldn't say that. So it depends on the scenario. So in some scenarios, we might, as the community land trust, if we've acquired a property, then it's up to us as an organization to decide what the value of the land is. It really doesn't matter so much in that we're setting the price at an amount that is affordable for the house, right? So if we set the price at $40,000, it doesn't really matter if we valued the land at $1 or at $10,000. We still sell the house for the same amount.
So for tax purposes, it's not subtracted from the.
We
value
won't,
of the
yeah,
house.
the city is like, especially, the city has been and continues to be really concerned about tax base. Because, we don't have a lot of money in the city, so that's understandable. And generally, it's, community land trusts don't ask for, exemption to the taxes on the land. Although, it could be that there might be an administration that's open to that or a council that's open to that in the future. And of course, if we would be happy to alleviate that tax burden, of course.
But then,
But that would be based on the assessment. It's already separated in the assessment, right?
Oh, I shouldn't look at it.
Yeah. So all land. So when you get your tax bill, you'll see what the tax is for your assessment. It might be like around $6,000. Your land is taxed at or assessed at, and then your improvement is what the majority of your tax is based on.
I just can't do it.
Yeah. Well, that's most people. Yeah. Right. Cool.
But when you do a real estate deal, you're paying for the land regardless of the house, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Yes. I think I understood your question. I think so. Yeah, I mean, we're paying, when we buy a house, we're paying for, oh, you're talking about a normal transaction, right? Yeah, exactly, yeah. So, we would separate that out. Where it would come into play would be, let's say for instance, we wanted to buy the land underneath your house. Like I said, most people would maybe, if they were gonna get their house into the land trust, they would make that as a donation, right? And then we would say like, okay, it's assessed at this amount, we would give you a tax deduction for that amount, or the government would give you a tax deduction. But let's say for some reason the land trust wanted to buy your house. I don't know what the scenario would be. Not your house, but just your land, and you would keep ownership. In that case, there would be an appraisal that would take place, and an appraiser would come and they would appraise your land, right? It's kind of an uncommon practice, but an appraiser could theoretically separate the value of your land from your improvement. And then based on that, or maybe based on an agreed upon, maybe we like average 2 appraisals or something like that and get the amount that we agreed upon. It would be a very unlikely scenario, but that would be when maybe that value would come into play. Yeah. All right.
And I know what happens with universities, and I'm not talking about the UNOR, what they will do is they will buy all the property around their institution,
Mhm.
but they allow the homeowner to live there for 25 years or whatever. And and they already have been paid for.
Mhm.
So that's what RIT did, for like Bailey Road and all that, the RIT owns all of that. And they don't want it now, they just want to make sure for expansion, they'll
Sure.
have it. So they bought all, everything, that whole square.
Mhm.
And then, but people can still live there and they get their money up front. Hopefully, maybe the new world will do that for all of us over here. You never know.
Well, I don't know if everyone would think hopefully.
Well, no, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
because they're gonna eventually own it anyways. I mean, in the future, 25 years from now,
Yeah.
that whole area is gonna.
Well, I don't know, like look at, well, it's interesting. So Highland Hospital, right?
Yes.
Highland Park neighborhood, it's an affluent, predominantly white neighborhood. And Highland Park really wanted to expand. They actually started buying houses.
Yes.
The neighborhood got wind of that, and they
Yes.
really fought back, and they stopped that expansion, and they stopped the purchase of land. So,
They did.
for now, but maybe in the future they might still expand. But that's the point of, some of it's the privilege of again, the demographic of the neighborhood. But also some of it speaks to the organization of the people there and them speaking up. So, if for instance, on the land that was bordering the University of Rochester, say, was in a significant amount was in the community land trust, and other parts of it were just people that were supportive of it or rallied together, you could have a concerted effort to combat that, and with enough, again, it's about PR in addition to the economics, but you could make a stand of it. It's a possibility.
The Fruit Belt neighborhood in Buffalo with First Niagara Hospital, right?
Mhm.
Just got 90 vacant lots awarded to their community land trust.
Yeah. So so they've been really so in Buffalo they've been organizing for some time, almost like in tandem with us, and they're having a big issue with gentrification in this one neighborhood in particular, the Fruit Belt, but in other areas of Buffalo as well. There's actually a couple of community land trusts starting up there, and their city council just agreed to transition city-owned lots over to this community land trust. So they're in the process of raising funds for development of those lots to build affordable homes. But that's just a really close local example. And then, as we said earlier, there's another community land trust that's been around in Syracuse for quite some time. They're not maybe as active as some of the other ones are, because I like the idea of a community land trust being, and I think a lot of the people here like the idea of it being an active participant in the community that's actively working for the betterment of that community. And it can't be a political effort because it's a 501c3 which prohibits political activities, but we can advocate for policies and we can support other efforts that may venture into political waters, and we can certainly lobby against expansion from entities that neighborhoods see as intrusions, and that's
Did
possible.
anyone from here go to Vermont?
Yep.
You all went?
I went to Vermont. I visited the Champlain Housing Trust, which is really impressive. And they have a whole building, a multi-story building for this community land trust. Like I said, they're a $10 million a year organization. They have their own NeighborWorks affiliate that meets in there. They're in the greater Burlington area, so they've really expanded out over the years. And they have they work with Habitat as well. Just a great, they do all their own homeowner education, etc. So yeah, I've been there, and then a few of us have been down to Dudley Street in Boston to visit them. That's another really inspirational community land trust. And hoping to get a trip to Albany. Sandra and I are going to ride bikes on the Canal Trail this summer.
No, that's
So if anyone wants to join us, I'm thinking 7 days there on the Canal Trail. We're going to camp out at the locks. It's free. And then we'll spend like a couple hours at the land trust, and then we'll bike back. All right.
Okay, I'd like to thank the Community Land Trust for presenting today.